Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the non-league show here on the West Yorkshire Football Show. I'm Chris Bell, and as ever, I'm joined by Brav Park Avenue superfan and all-round non-league fanatic, Lewis Sale. Thanks for joining me, mate. How are we?
No worries, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Thank you very much. All good. A bit of a busy obviously it's been a busy start to the season all around, but in particular, a busy start with the Northern Premier League starting last weekend and in midweek for you. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about Brav Park Avenue later, but I can't imagine you'll be in the best of moods with the way things have started for the Abbey.
No, I think we can talk about other fortunes, can't we, apart from Avenue tonight? Yeah, no, there's plenty going on. Like I say, from teams who are currently unbeaten in the league to those like Avenue at the moment who haven't registered a win yet. NCL has been going, 3-4 games, FA Cup as well underway. So, yeah, there's not much excuse now for some of these lads to be up and running and giving it the best.
Yeah, it does seem to have been a very busy start to the season across the board, as you say. Some sides in our region have just played the first couple. Other sides, I think Yorkshire Amateur have played 5 already, and sadly for them in particular, I think it's been 5 straight defeats. We'll talk more about them a little bit later on. I'm delighted to say that, just to start with, joining us is the joint manager of Campion AFC here in Bradford, and that's Lee Ashforth. Thanks for joining us, Lee.
No problems at all. Good to be here.
So, in all, Lee, I mean, we'll go with a generic opener, really. A pretty good start to the season for you guys off the back of what was a tremendous season last year.
Yeah, it's been a great start for us at Campion. You know, we kept the majority of the squad together from last season. Lost a couple of lads who wanted, Mark Ferguson wanted to go and try himself a little bit of higher, and Ash Flynn dropped out of Wakefield to get more game time, which, them two guys went with us best wishes. They were in and out of the team last year through injury and everything else. And then we kept the majority of the squad together. Everyone stayed, and we just made a couple of additions, and it's been good so far. We've got off to a great start.
In terms of that squad, Lee, like you mentioned, it's been quite a relatively settled squad, hasn't it, for the past couple of seasons? And I'm guessing that's helps with the success of what the lads have gone through recently.
Yeah, we're in a really good position. Me and James went out and got players that we felt had fit into the core group that we had. We made sure we got players that had fit into a group that's, I guess, really good mates. They've got a never say die attitude, for want to say it, and a great togetherness. And that's where we've been for the last couple of seasons. There's been very few fallouts, which is unusual. You normally have a few fallouts in the dressing room and things like that, and we haven't really had that. Odd one or two that you'd expect, just from a competitive nature. But the lads are a really good group to work with, and me and James are not only fortunate, but we've worked hard to create that, and it gives us a good platform going into football matches. That we've got that, like I say, togetherness that gets us over the line sometimes.
Obviously, you touched on people, kind of coming in and out, and probably people who might be either watching this for the first time or may not, be familiar with how it works. How does it work like at this level in terms of scouting and getting players in? Obviously, players will have contacts, you'll have contacts, and obviously yourself working at West Riding FA. How does it kind of work bringing players in? Do people go out and scout games, or is it on recommendations? How does it work?
It's a bit of everything, really. Players know players. We go out and watch as many games as we can. Certainly, James is very good at that. Tuesday night, I went and watched a game rather than, while the lads are training, or there for 10 minutes and off to watch a game. So you're watching players all the time. And then with social media now, it's a lot easier than it's ever been. So you can watch who's playing, who's in the teams. And that's the thing with Step 5 football in particular. There's very few contracted players. So much as you look at teams who've had a poor start to the season, by Christmas they could be flying. You look at an example of Parkgate last season, who were rock bottom in the league that we're in, going nowhere, and then by Christmas they were pulling themselves well away from it. And this year they've started in that league like an house on fire. So things change quickly. So you tend not to worry about the league too much. Who's going to be potentially up near the top. And you keep an eye on them results, but the other teams can change relatively quickly. So regarding getting players in and things like that, you're just keeping an eye on what's happening in and around the other teams. Certainly now with the North East Counties website, it's very good because by 3:05 you can see the other team sheets that they're on there already, so you can see who's playing. So you have a look who's on the subs bench and see who might want to come. But I'm sure teams look at us and see who's on the bench for us and go, what's happening there? So it's a tough world we live in because the 7-day rule tends to get ignored quite a lot, and we're not daft with that. And it's a matter of keeping relationships with other managers. I mean, you look at the Bradford teams, I've got really good relationships with all the Bradford teams, Leland, Riz at Albion and Danny Forrest at Thackley. We have good relationships, and that's the way you've got to be. And then further afield with teams we're going to competing against, like Simon Parks at Knaresborough, I've been good friends with him. He played for me at Harrogate, so it's good to see people that you know, and it's kind of a close-knit family, even with the managers.
One of the things that I imagine helps with the scouting is the way the fixtures fall. Now, obviously, I mean, me and Lewis were talking a couple of weeks ago, and we were looking into next week. I think, with the exception of Thursday, there's football in our region across the Northern Counties East League and North West Counties on every night next week. How much does the fact that the fixtures are spread out, especially for you guys, take tomorrow night as an example? How important is it that these fixtures spread out, for one, from the scouting perspective, and also to try and pull in fans that, might be, a Bradford City season ticket holder and that sort of thing, that'll be busy on a Saturday with the league clubs?
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's great that we can play Friday nights. It's good in some ways and not so good in others. We have 3 or 4 players that work shifts and they work Friday nights. So suddenly they go, well, I'm struggling to play Fridays. Saturdays are better for me. But then you have some lads that say it's great because I've got the weekend off and I can go watch your Leeds Uniteds or whoever else they watch locally, and they go watch the games themselves. Also gives me and James the option to go out and watch games on a Saturday or spend some time with the families that sometimes get more me than him, I think. He's never at home. But we do well. We work it between us, and we've got Andy Shepherd as well, who goes out and watches games for us. It's non-league football. We're in it because we love it. We do it for no. We don't get paid. We do it because we enjoy it, and that's what we do. So it's good fun every week.
In terms of this season, obviously last season was a real success story for you guys at Campion, 3 trophies, including the West County County Cup as well, and the league. Life in Premier Division's not been too bad, has it, in the past few games?
No, we've got off to a great start. We spoke about the end of last season. Literally within a week and a half of the season finishing, we were meeting our own players to make sure we kept them for this year. Which showed we felt that we really wanted that squad to stay together. We felt momentum was massive. You look at the history of other clubs previously, certainly like North Ferriby, Winterton, they bounced up back-to-back promotions, and it was something that we had to look to do as well. We didn't want to go up and say, let's find us feet in this division. We wanted to go up and have a good go at it again, because the journey went on last year as a squad were absolutely phenomenal. The celebrations at the end of the season felt like they went on for about a month and took a month to recover from. But that's what we had to do. We had to kick on again, and the best teams do it season after season. It doesn't matter what level you're playing at, being Premier League or that grassroots football. The best teams do it back to back. Last season's gone. Great memories, without a doubt, but can soon be forgotten about if you don't have a successful season in 23-24.
In terms of the cup competition as well, unfortunately, just losing out to Withenshaw, second half you gave it everything, didn't you? And I think sometimes is it almost a little bit of, not a reality check, but just to keep people on the ground a little bit and keep that focus, and like, you can't win every game.
Yeah, I disagree with you can't win every game. You can. There's no. I'm a manager, and James is as well. We're not going into any game saying we can't win it, so we can win every game, and that's what we look to do. Obviously, we were massively disappointed with Withenshaw game. Sometimes things go against you in football matches. Aidan Day, after a quarter of an hour having a serious injury, kind of knocked us back, so we never got going in that first half. And psychologically for the lads, Aidan's been a massive part of it. He's been around for a couple of years, barring the year that he left us and went to Eccleshill. He won't thank me for mentioning that, but it kind of knocked us back a little bit in that game. But then half time, we had a couple of chats, changed formation a little bit, and went out and had a real good go at it. And by the time we equalised, we had literally all our attacking. I think we had 6 centre forwards on the pitch by the time we equalised. But obviously, then we were susceptible to counter attack. That's just football. We'd made the subs. We couldn't change anything, and they got one on the counter attack. And unfortunately, sometimes it goes against you like that. And it was disappointing because you want an FA Cup run. It's the money for the club, the kudos around it. But we had to bounce back quickly, and that were important against Barton last week. That we put the Tuesday night to bed and we went and beat Barton, which is what we did.
And obviously that was was a great win, and he talks about one of your 6 strikers there. One of them at the moment's on fire, getting some well-deserved plaudits. Not only has he done it this year, but he also did it last year. Marcus Day, 5 goals so far this season. You'll know him from your days in Harrogate as well. He's not a bad player for this level, is he?
No, he played for me at Harrogate Railway, great lad, and then he played for James at Campion. I tried to get him when I was Clitheroe manager, and he's a great player. He's a good lad. He's professional as anything. He's just good. He's good to have around, And the good thing is about him, he finished top scorer last year with Paddy Sykes very close to him. And Max is a good player. He went away just before the holiday, and he were on the bench the first game of the season, and then his reaction is the game after he plays and gets an hat-trick. That's the kind of character you're looking for. So yeah, he's great, but we've got a squad of great players, and they know it, and that's the good thing. They're pushing each other to play. They know they can't have off days, and yeah, really good togetherness.
Final question before we let you go, Liam. Thanks for your time. You've got 3 games in a week, starting tomorrow night against Pickering, Seals away on Tuesday, then Wickham in the FA Vars. If it doesn't stop, does it? It only gets harder for you guys.
No, it does, and we listen. Managers will always use cliches, and we do take it one game at a time. We go tomorrow against Pickering. It's Aidan Kirby's 100th game, which is a good thing. The lads will be aware of that, and they'll want that to be 3 points for him, because we have a laugh about it, because he's literally, I think, played every position for Campion in the 4 seasons or so that he's been with us. Even played in goal, like one game last season when his keeper had concussion. So he's a great character, somebody that the lads look up to. He's certainly fiery, and he'll get that 100th game tomorrow. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to concentrate on the game tomorrow. And I stand by it. You look, Pickering have lost 4 out of 4, but they've got a new manager in, so you just don't know what you're getting. You look at everything about it and you go, well, we've won 3 out of 3. They've lost the 4. We should be winning the game. 100% we should. But it won't matter whether we're playing Knaresborough, who've won 3 out of 3. We would want to go in and win the game. And we'll concentrate on tomorrow before we even start thinking about Silsden on Tuesday night, and whether or not we're going up to Newcastle or north of Newcastle next Friday, and worrying about song initiations and stuff like that on the way back. We'll worry about that once we've got the next 2 out of the way.
Just how hard is it on the legs at this level? As you say, with players having jobs and that sort of thing, to do this in this case, what would usually be a Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, but for you is a Friday, Tuesday, Friday.
That's the importance of having a good squad. The fact that you can use 5 subs now is massive. We said that last year. And that's why, instead of having, no disrespect, but young lads that haven't played at this level before, we try to have 5 lads on the bench that can go on and affect the game. And that's what, fortunate, we've had over the last couple of years. There's odd time where you're down a number or you're down a couple because of work and things, but we try to keep the squad really hungry, really look after the players. So we openly say to them, there's not one of them who'll play every game this season. They'll all have a rest, barring Brad as keeper, who you tend to go with the same keeper every week, and he'll fall out with me if we leave him out of the team, so we've got to pick him. But we've got that. At the minute, we've got that squad in depth, and we have picked up 3 or 4 injuries this time, which we avoided last year, so we are a little bit stretched, but lads will come back in, and like I say, we're bringing in good players, so we've just got to take one game at a time and see where it takes us.
Absolutely. Well, thanks ever so much for taking the time out of your evening, mate, to come on and join us here on the West Yorkshire Football Show. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and there's a very, very certain chance, I think, that me and Lewis will see you down at Campion tomorrow night, because what else is to do in Bradford on a Friday night?
No problems at all. You'll enjoy the game anyway, so I'll see you both tomorrow and keep it up. Thanks.
Cheers, Lee.
Thanks a lot, mate. That's Lee Ashforth, the joint manager of Campion AFC, and as we mentioned, a really good start to the season for them, Lewis. We may as well stick on the Northern Counties East theme and do things a little bit in reverse. We'll work his way back up the pyramid, perhaps. We may as well, with the games that are going on. So, a great start for Campion, as we've said, and good starts for a number of sides actually across our region. Yeah,
at the moment, Campion, along with the likes of Knaresborough, probably leading the way. Like obviously we mentioned, unfortunately, just dropping out the FA Cup. It would have been ironically playing one of our local teams in Ossett United this weekend if they had have won. But yeah, they've got league action, and you can tell from Lee's words there that they are in it to win it. They're not there to just make up the numbers. They're definitely there to make a difference. In terms of the rest of the NCL, it's tight, isn't it? It's absolutely tight, and I think especially some of the midweek games and even Saturday games that we're going to talk about shortly, but all involving teams around West Yorkshire. There's a few derbies in there as well. And I think, you know, obviously we're going to be now, like I say, you get 4 or 5 games under your belt, and like you mentioned, now is it on the legs? It's tight, and those with squads and those that without the knocks and bumps at the moment, you know, might just come out on top. So it's going to be some really intriguing fixtures, I think, this weekend.
Yeah, so turn attention to a couple of the other sides then across our area, and for Penistone and in particular, again, a good start for them. They're in cup action this weekend, but in the league, been going great guns.
3 out of 3. Can't get any better than that at the moment. And ironically, I think I've gone slightly viral on social media. I don't know if you've seen it. You've been a Simpsons fan yourself. They've put a video on the Facebook, I think, and on Twitter this today or yesterday about the upcoming game. It's absolutely worth watching if you can watch it. You'll like it, Chris. But obviously this weekend in FA Cup action, Prestwich Hayes, you know, from the northwest, it's going to be almost like East versus West, 2 really good teams. Penistone expected to be up there or thereabouts in the NCL. And even though it's a breakaway from league action, they'll want to keep that momentum going because, as we keep saying, and especially last week, you know, winning does breed confidence. And I think Penistone will be looking to go as far as they possibly can. And that does sound really daft of me to say, but it is true because Penistone could go quite far and almost get toward, you know, to playing an MPL team and really challenging some of them teams around them. And how good can he actually be? Will be awful to see, hopefully.
Yeah, another side that's started well, but of course had a bit of a freak abandonment is that's Albion Sports the other night with a nasty injury.
Yeah, Albion have started really well, 2 out of 2 at the moment. We went to watch them a couple of times, didn't we? Which we spoke about in previous podcasts, really. And it was almost getting used to a brand new environment, a brand new pitch on that 4G at Horsfall rather than the Farsley Celtic. But they started reasonably well. And unfortunately, last night, they played Maltby Main, and it was a terrible injury to Jake Squires. And, you know, we'll wish all the best for him for a speedy recovery. His tib and fib break, unfortunately. And that goes to show, you know, a serious injury. It doesn't matter how the game's going or anything like that. You know, the players' welfare and safety is absolute paramount to everyone. So, yeah, obviously that will take place at some point again. And, you know, it just brings things into a little bit of reality, really. Obviously not being action this week. Albion are away at Burscough in the FA Cup. Again, another tricky tie, tricky place to go. But one that Albion will hopefully be looking at to possibly progress. And, you know, if one of our teams from that NCL league, you know, NCL Premier get into the later stages of the FA Cup preliminary rounds, then, you know, we could again see some derbies. You've still got Farsley, Guiseley, Avenue to come in there as well, and the MPLs with the Brighouse and Liversidge. And it'd be great to see some of these teams really get as far as they can do. And not saying they're going to get to the first round, because I mean that would be an absolute, that's like climbing Everest, let's be brutally honest. But if they almost get to that second qualifying round, would be an amazing achievement, some of these clubs.
Yeah, it would indeed. We're going to do a full round of the FA Cup fixtures towards the end of the show. Keep working his way down that table, and Thacksley are another side that are going well. I mean, picked up 6 points from their opening 4 games. But look, we've said in previous shows that we were a little bit concerned for them in pre-season. As I mentioned, I saw them 3 times in pre-season. They didn't win a game, and they conceded 13 goals. I was fearing the worst. But Tom Greaves and Danny Forrest, they've got themselves into a healthy mid-table position at the moment, 6th, 7th. But of course, slightly complicated with other sides having games in hand on them.
Yeah, doing well because you've not been for the past couple of weeks, so they'll be happy about that one.
I saw them pick up a win against Pickering last week, I think. So
you did.
Win.
Yeah, you could have done a scout report for Lee for tomorrow night, couldn't you, for Pickering? Yeah, you know what? Fackley have started relatively decently as well. And I know that we've been speaking to Tom, and hopefully Tom will join us for a future pod as well. It should be great to speak to him. Vast experience. You know, Silsden away in midweek, did suffer a 2-1 defeat, but, you know, selfishly, Greasy's got his 350th goal, which is just a monumental achievement across all this time.
Sure, he'll be keeping that quiet to himself, won't he?
He won't talk about that in the slightest. No, absolutely not. But, you know, pushing Silsden close, and we spoke about Silsden recently as well. And Fackley, you know, really did push them close for 2-1. Spoken to a few of the guys there connected to the club and our travels in midweek last week. And I think, again, that win against Pickering, you know, they said they did okay, but, you know, want to do a lot better. There's room for improvement, which of course there is. But when you've got the likes of Greaves and Chippy and Dempsey's to come back, George Green in there, they've definitely got quality. They've got experience, and like Lee said, a lot of it is about togetherness at this level. And those lads do know each other extremely well. So you'd expect Fackley to hopefully just keep going. Like you say, the league table might be a little bit distorted because there's a bit of difference between some of the games played. But for Fackley to be at the moment 7th, I think they'll be reasonably happy with that start. And if they're around there, in the next, say, 5-10 games, then they've done really well considering a bit of an indifferent pre-season.
Yeah, very much so. There's a cluster of sides, actually, when you go from 7th. So you got Frickley in 8th, Silton 9th, Emily in 10th. We'll come on to Frickley and, of course, Pat Maguire's side.
Yeah, they've got Silsden. It's a big game.
Yeah,
it's a big game. And Frickley started all right. Again, another rebuild from Pat at Frickley. Silsden getting some players back. Like we said, Adam Clayton's back in the starting lineup as well. Picking up, quite tight wins, but it's exactly what you need to do to be successful in this league. Despite a bit of an indifferent start in the first 2 games and the FA Cup, with beating Rossington, beating Fackley last night. So Silsden will be looking up, got the quality to do it. But yeah, Pat and the guys at Frickley will be looking to just keep on doing what they're doing. Again, very much like Fackley, a bit of an indifferent potential start to pre-season, getting a new squad together, new systems. Luckily, Pat's come in there and got the plays hopefully you wanted, and I think that could be a fixture to watch out for this week.
Yeah, definitely seems that way on paper at least. And Silsden, it's massive the fact that Adam Clayton back from injury, still awaiting, I think, the return of Ross Daly, of course, who will be a massive bonus for them to come back into the centre of the park. And look, we talked about the names and the players on the pitch and the players that they've signed, but important they have hopefully turned that little bit of a corner after that difficult start to the season, and we'll start working our way up to certainly where they want to be, and definitely where Matt Kavanagh will want that side to be.
Yeah, definitely. And again, there's another bunch of people we've come across in our travels, haven't we? And we've said before, a lot of these teams are on the doorstep. You were talking about with Lee, exactly right. And it's not just sometimes 1 or 2 people go. There's almost 3 or 4, a group of them that will go and check teams out, players out. They might leave somewhere between the game to go to another game. Let's be brutally honest. These people are absolutely dedicated to what they do in football, especially at this level. Like Lee saying he's voluntary. These people are doing it for sometimes nothing, which is remarkable. And they will put everything in to their job to make the club a success, which is just amazing to see. I think Silsden, like I say, we were against Eccleshill, I think we were 3 or 4 of them. We spoke to Cav there. Again, I think you could sense that there were a little bit of, just a bit of an uplift. And again, that's a big difference for Silsden. Again, it's another team who've gone through quite a number of changes. New strike force. It's pretty much a new spine to their team. But also, they've got lads who've been there 3-4 years, been under Danny Forrest before. So, it's getting used to a whole different way of working, different way of playing. And again, you're shopping in quite a congested market. So Silsden going to Frickley, I think probably for them, they'll be not expecting to win, but on paper, we'll be hoping to get 3 points. But I wouldn't count anything about Pat Maguire's team. What you're going to get from Pat's team is a lot of stubbornness, a lot of dogginess, and a little bit of quality when sometimes teams have it. He did that at Fackley, and he's doing that at Frickley at the moment.
Whilst we've covered kind of 8th versus 9th in the table currently, we can go on to 10th versus 13th. So that's 10th place Emily are travelling to 13th place Golka. I mean, we saw Emily at Eccleshill last week, it would have been, and they were just impressively efficient in the way they went about things. And again, it's a squad there with some key experience, Paul Walker, James Knowles, of course, and the penalty-winning maestro himself, James Walshaw.
Yeah, you know what? You took the words right out of my mouth, and I'm not just saying it because we're talking, but efficient is absolutely the right word with Emily. Were they easy on the eye? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But what they did is they did the absolute basics right. And especially in this division, it's set pieces. And I think we said it again last week, and we'll repeat ourselves again. And no doubt that will happen again through the rest of the season. That set pieces in this league are crucial to being up towards the top end of that table. It does sound quite stereotypical, but there's a lot of big lads in this division who might technically sometimes might not be on the same level as obviously some of the leagues above. But what you're going to get is absolute 100% effort. They're tough, they're physical. But at the same time, they do have, like I said earlier, a bit of quality. You know, they are gems absolutely in this area. So for the likes of Emily, like I say, we've got Walshaw, we've got Ruben Jerome, over from Workington, previously known at Brighouse. Tom Haig, previously at Brighouse in his centre as well. You know, Cowgill as well, previously been at Ossett. So again, that's another team with a brand new spine. And I think from that perspective, you know, I think they'll do okay. I think they'll be up there knocking on the door. I mean, Golker again, you know, listening to a few people about them, they've been relatively impressed. And, you know, obviously we know Stephen Downs from you know, our shows as well, and Stephen talks highly of Golker and Emily, and it's, you know, it is almost like the Downsy derby, so to speak. I'm not sure that he'll definitely be keeping, you know, a real close eye on what's happening there. But, you know, for Golker, if they pull out a victory against Emily, that might just make people stand up and go, you know what, Golker are here to not be messed about with, despite losing Cale Price in pre-season. You know, they've definitely made up for it. You know, players who've been there at Brighouse previously, and, you know, they get good crowds at Golker, so it's a real tough place to go. And Emily are not going to have all their own way there.
No, I'm sure there'll be something on the Huddersfield Hub website that Steve will be producing. So there we go, Steve. There's your plug for the Huddersfield Hub for you, mate. The other thing with Golker, I suppose, is the one thing we have, you know, spoke to Steve about in the past, is they are, you know, pulling in some decent numbers there in terms of through return styles and on the terraces.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. I mean, I'm just looking at your tendencies. You know, first game at home, just short of 500, 488. I mean, that's a really healthy number. And then you look against Trafford in the FA Cup, 422. That's in an FA Cup. You know, don't get me wrong, at this level, there might not be a massive amount of season tickets, but as we all know, in cup competitions, you've got to pay to watch your team. So to still get that number, similar to what he did the previous weekend in the FA Cup, is a real significant one. Golker are another club who've kind of just risen a bit like Campion in some respects from the regional leagues and kind of working their way up very slowly. But also they've got a really good catchment area in Golker. You know, they're in and around the Huddersfield area. You know, they've got obviously Brighouse as well close by. So, you know, Golker are slowly going about things, you know, the right way. And, you know, ironically, their next 3 fixtures are against teams in our area. So again, you'd expect big crowds. Emily, like we've mentioned, Fackley, and then they're away at Frickley. So Golker, you know, are kind of just going under the radar. I think that's exactly how they'd want it. But again, like I mentioned earlier, Golker want to be knocking on the door of the playoffs. And I think if they do, with that home crowd, and that home crowd will significantly increase even in the playoffs. We've seen it in cup competitions last year. I think we were close to getting 1,000. If not, we got 1,000. So momentum is definitely down there at Golker. It's a great success story.
Yeah, very much so. Ecclesfield United, as I said, we saw them lose to Emily the other week, but Lee Elam was certainly wanting for things to pick up somewhat there because they didn't give a particularly good account of themselves that night. And then it's quite hard to place where I think Ecclesfield will be because on the face of it, they've got some cracking individuals, talent and Lover, of course, being there. But just not quite squad-wise, perhaps, on a comparison to some of the other sides in the NCL.
I think probably the word we used was raw, wasn't it? They've got a lot of raw talent at Ecclesfield. And I think, you know, we like to Lee Elam, he'll really harness that. And I think he will, you know, really kind of nurture that talent towards the end of the season. I mean, you know, probably midway to the end of the season. It's how quickly can Ecclesfield start. Don't get me wrong. You know, kind of mid-table, 4 games. You know, it's probably not the points return Lee would have wanted at the moment. But, you know, there were little shoots of, you know, signs that they could potentially do something. But obviously, we watched them one game. Don't get me wrong. Watched them against Emily, and you know Emily just had that experience, like I mentioned earlier, a bit of stubbornness, and they just had a bit of know-how of how to just get through that game and do what they needed to do. I think Ecclesfield will eventually get to that point. But look, going forward, they did look dangerous. And, you know, I think even the likes of Coley on the bench as well, who've come on previously at Sills, and I've seen him quite a few times, and he really impressed me. So Lee's worked with a lot of youngsters, and you know, in his previous jobs, you know, and let's be honest, he's got a really good track record at Ecclesfield. He got them so close to getting promoted. And you know, even though it's a completely different squad, you won't put anything past the likes of Lee to get that team going. And yeah, it's going to be tough. It's a real tough start, and it might get a little bit worse. It might take almost 1 step back before taking 2 steps forward at Ecclesfield, but hopefully they'll pull it up.
Garforth Town, a side that aren't in action at all this week. Then the next game looks pretty menacing on the face of it. They're away at Knaresborough on Tuesday night. No win for them so far, just the 1 point from their opening 3 games. I'll be honest, a little surprised. I thought that the results, but obviously, obvious, a long way to go, but not the start they would have wanted down at Garforth.
No, I mean, what do we know? We touched on it, didn't we, at the beginning of the season? We thought Garforth might definitely be up there in the pre-season, was pretty decent as well. But yeah, just struggled. Played Hallam at home. Hallam had a really good side. But then drawing against Emily
week, didn't they? Hallam and third in the league and flying.
Yeah, exactly. So Garforth go away, Emily and then draw 1 also. And drew against Selby. So there's just. Again, it's just getting used to different players joining the teams so early in the season. I think, and this is why we got Lee on the show to talk about and ask the questions about having a settled squad. It makes such a difference to have that. If players know each other inside out, they're good mates, they get along with each other, on and off the pitch, it really makes a big difference. And, Garforth will improve. There's absolutely no doubt about it. They've got enough quality in that changing room to do that. It's just kind of getting over that line. And yeah, disappointing loss against Handsworth, but then what could be better, going to Knaresborough, who've won every game so far, go away, potentially get a victory there, and then an FA Vars action, and then return to home against Rossington. So, I think Garforth will eventually get going. But yeah, listen, they'll want to do it as soon as they possibly can, because they don't want to be in and around that mid-table, because it will get easily congested in the next, let's say, a month or 2.
Yeah, very much so. Just to clarify then, the NCEL Premier fixtures for this weekend. Eccles Hill versus Handsworth FC, Frickley versus Silsden, Gorka versus Emily, and Thackfleet versus Barton. Of course, a few sides in FA Cup action that we will come on to. Quick look then at NCL Division 1. Glasshoughton Welfare at home to Parkgate. Wakefield travel to Harrogate Railway. Yorkshire Amateur are at home to Beverley Town. And Nostell are away at Selby Town. So there's some interesting looking fixtures there. And the way that the table is shaping up at the moment, Nostell, 3 wins from their opening 4 games, sitting in 4th. Top of the table, Harrogate Railway, who, again, out of our area, I know, but a side that we saw in pre-season away at Silsden. We spoke to 1 or 2 from Harrogate Railway there, and I think they are certainly surprising a few people, because when you think back to the summer, the old manager at Harrogate goes to Tadcaster, as does, 8 or 9 of the players from that first team squad. And Harrogate Railway have effectively been left with a very, very young side. I think the goalkeeper, for example, I think he's only 18 years of age.
Yeah, and that's a real good start for Railway. One of Lee's old clubs, quite a synonymous name in our region, so to speak, just outside West Yorkshire. But
that's Yorkshire.
Close enough. Yeah, it's close enough, isn't it? But yeah, I think there was a little bit of pessimism just going into this season, especially when they pushed Campion so close as well. I say so close, within reason. But they were thereabouts, kind of just on the shoulder of Campion if ever they slipped up. But yeah, another rebuild there, and they started really well. But again, we talk about success stories in our region. Nostell are absolutely there at the moment. 9 points from 4. Their loss was against Railway.
Yeah, I was about to say the only defeat came against Railway.
And as well, I think if not the highest scorers in our region. 16 goals at the moment in 4 games. Averaging 4 goals, that is pretty good going at Nostell. And there's a lot of teams will be wanting the same kind of firepower that Nostell have got at the moment. Really tricky game away at Selby. So hopefully Nostell can just keep up momentum, but let's see what happens. We said that might be quite a close league. We thought Wakefield, being honest, might have started the season a little bit better. Mid-table at the moment, slipped up a couple of games. Lost one. That's the record at the moment. They've got, like you said earlier, real battle against Harrogate Railway. We spoke about, the fixture really being a standout as Frickley Sills, and let's be honest, Railway against Wakefield is another standout game. So yeah, it's close, and I think you'd hope that Wakefield just get on a bit of a run now, because there's been quite high expectations there for obvious reasons. But if we go to Railway and again pick up a victory, that might just get the season going a bit.
Yeah, I want to touch on the bottom end of the league, and Horbury are another side that, to be fair, suffered a heavy defeat against Nostell a couple of games ago. lower mid-table for them at the moment. Again, possibly thought, admittedly early stages, but I thought they might have been one of the pace setters, but not the way it's gone so far.
And they've got a real tricky game against Retford at the weekend. And we, Horbury have been a success. Another team who've kind of come from nowhere in our local region, climbed up the leagues, and still wanting to be successful. Again, it's one
last year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They stood out against Geyser, didn't they, as well in that West Riding County Cup game. So, yeah, it probably disappointing start. The goals against Colin doesn't look great, -7, because, like you said, of that a heavy loss to Nostell. Hopefully, Aubrey do pick it up, but it's going to be tight. Obviously, at the moment it's a real shame about Ashforth welfare at the moment, having to postpone the 3 games. Obviously, that situation's ongoing. So, Aubrey just need to look at themselves and kind of say, right, we have been successful in the past few years. We were decent enough last year. They were almost leading that league with Campion for the first quarter of that campaign, until unfortunately they just tailed off a little bit. But yeah, there's nobody at the moment, like you're saying, like a Knaresborough, that are really running away with it. Harrogate Railway, yes, they've 13 from 5, but they've not won every game. So again, it's just getting that consistency going over the next 4 or 5 games. Horbury, we're hoping just to have a little bit of momentum going into the obviously building up to kind of a festive period.
So it's difficult to touch on Yorkshire Amateur. Bottom of the league, 5 defeats from 5, and across their games so far, I mean, it's not quite a step song, but they've conceded 4, 5, 6, and 7 goals in 4 separate matches so far this season out of their 5. The 1 point on the board was a draw against Louth, and we've talked about how things have changed at Yorkshire Amateur in recent years. Obviously, go back 4 or 5 years, there was a lot of hope, a lot of expectation, and resources that were there. Not huge. We're not talking equivalent of Wrexham money at that level, but there was players on the books that were known across the West Yorkshire non-league region. It's a vastly different situation down there now, and obviously bottom of the NCEL Division 1 and not looking in a particularly good place at this early stage for them.
No, and again, we spoke about synonymous names with our region, and Yorkshire Amateur are definitely there, aren't there? A lot of people, from almost you go back, 10 years, don't you? You look at the likes of players that have had, like Luke Sharry, Ryan Sarant playing for him, Matt Dempsey was at Fackley, was there as well. So, they've had a real good pedigree over the years of Yorkshire Amateurs, of the Hammers, and, it is, unfortunately, it's a shame to see him at the moment at bottom of the league, but this is what you get when you have a complete rebuild of a squad. I will obviously keeping an eye on the pre-season and watch a few interviews, and I think they were hoping that kind of the players would quickly get used to each other. Again, such a overhaul, and they've just not really got going at the moment. And I can't, without seeing them really firsthand, it's hard to kind of really give a real comprehensive report on them. But like I say, from outside looking at the moment, the results don't look too clever. But they've got Beverley at home, Athersley at the moment, not really ripping up any trees at the moment either. So let's see what they can do. But sometimes, like we said, confidence is massive, and confidence is going to be really low at the moment. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But one win might just turn things around from them. And like I said earlier, consistency, big issue. Let's hope they do it, because there's a lot of people who've got good affiliation with our club.
Yeah, big game for them at the back end of the month as well, away at Bellevue when they take on Wakefield, of course. There. Moving on then to the northwest counties Prem, and of course Barlick are in cup action this week, but steady away. They had a thrilling 4-4 draw for them against Kendall Town on I think it would have been Tuesday night. So coming back from 4-1 down at half time.
Yeah, and sometimes that does happen in our leagues. And it wasn't the only 4-4 as well, was it, across the region, which we might talk about later on. But what we've seen, and I said this even in pre-season at one point, I think I saw like 42 goals in about 6 games. It was madness. Defenses definitely weren't on top, and I think you can almost say the same. Ironically, talk about Amish really in kind of a similar situation there. So, Barlick have done really well to come back from 4-1 down against Kendall, who were a decent outfit in the northwest counties. Yeah, they'll be steady away, won't they, Barlick? You know what you're going to get from them. They're a tough side to break down. I say that after conceding 4 goals, but usually they are a tough side to break down, and I think they'll be looking to just sometimes that kind of result and the way you come back does feel a little bit of a victory. Don't get me wrong, the first half something must have been said in the changing room for that to happen. And I know that's a cliche to say, but to almost win that second half 3-0 will absolutely get them going for this weekend.
Yeah, going on to the Northwest Counties, Division 1 North for Ilkley and Steeton. They met each other on Tuesday night.
They did indeed. Shame he's not on the podcast really to kind of go through stuff. But yeah, it's ironic, isn't it, how Ilkley have almost, they faced Route 1 Rovers as well and Steeton recently. So, kind of them almost derbies are out the way now. And definitely both teams will be looking to just improve on recent form. Again, a little bit of inconsistency between both. And I mean, I don't know what kind of how do you see that one in terms of, the Ilkley Steetons at the moment, Chris? Because there just seems to be, we talk about consistency, 1 week they're losing, next minute they're winning.
Yeah, it's a bit all over the shop, isn't it? For two sides that, again, especially with them both having playoff games last season, kind of thought they'd both be there or thereabouts. But as we say, kind of that division in particular, it's a bit of a lottery, isn't it? At the moment, it's fairly open at this early stage.
Yeah, I think there's exactly that, and you only have to look again. Route 1 Rovers, again, I think it was 4-3. They've done the opposite for what we did against Ilkley. And they turned it around against Ashton. So
there's only St. Helens 6 for 6 so far.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think the guys at Steeton will be really happy to come away Ilkley with a draw. I did follow some of the coverage on socials, and apparently the second half was a lot better than the first. Yeah, from Josh. The second half was much better. But obviously, made some goalkeeper made some really good saves. But yeah, I think Steeton will be on one side quite happy they've not lost against Ilkley because, aspirations wise, like you mentioned earlier, they're probably going for the same thing. Ilkley might be disappointed they've not kind of beaten a Steeton, with no disrespect to them, because they have been up and down. 1-1 in a weird kind of way does suit both, but doesn't suit both teams if I want to push to go up. But ultimately, I think, like I said earlier, you've just got to have a little bit of a period where you just don't lose. And sometimes draws away from home don't do a club any harm, do they? And going to the likes of Ilkley, who, we're very close to getting promoted, is not a bad result, really, for Steeton. And, and also, if we're talking about being disappointed, that shows how far they've come as well.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, 6th and 8th in that Northwest Counties First Division North table. And, I mean, perhaps we're being slightly harsh between the pair of them if you put their games together, so that'd be 12 games and only 3 defeats actually across all of their fixtures, all 12 so far, so not too bad, in the right place at least. Kind of sniffing around. Underneath though, Route 1 Rovers, who have had another cracking win last Monday night, another 4-3 thriller against Holker Old Boys, who were playoff side of themselves last season.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, Route 1 of a team to go and watch if you possibly can. I'll say that, it might be a 0-0 now, but, to have 14 goals in the past 2 games is phenomenal. And they just seem to be just keep doing what they're doing, don't they? And again, that's a real good sign of a team where, they suffered a really disappointing loss against Ilkley when they were, I wouldn't say winning comfortably, but, scoreline suggests they were doing pretty well. And then, obviously, they lose it in the last couple of minutes with 2 goals being conceded. But then, I don't know about you, but I sometimes notice this pattern where a team gets beat or draws in the last minute. I mean, the following week, they do the complete reverse, and they almost do the other team in the last minute. I mean, that's a great win for Route 1 after such a bit, couple of difficult games. So it'd be great to see them just keep challenging Ilkley and Steeton, and that's what they want. Like I said, they're not necessarily noisy neighbours, but they are knocking on a door to kind of challenge these two. And it's a great success story. And how many times are we saying it now across our region? Another team come from nowhere, just doing what they're doing and upsetting the odds a little bit. And it'd be great to speak to some of the lads at Route 1 Rovers and just get to know a little bit more about them, what they're all about, and kind of how they're seeing and how they're adapting to life in the Northwest Counties. Because they're predominantly a Bradford-based team, playing over in Keighley in West Yorkshire. So, it'd be interesting to see if ever they did get to the North East Counties League, because, they are, that would be a really interesting story. But, I mean, how many times have we talked about the different debates of who goes over what borders and stuff?
Yeah, and how that Northwest Counties and North and East Counties is split. Final side on the Northwest County side of things is Shirley, and sadly for them, similarly to Yorkshire Amateur in the East, Shirley in the Northwest are sadly propping up that First Division 1 North.
Yeah, not the best of starts, unfortunately, for Shirley coming into the league. And I think that's another team where it's going to be a real tough adjustment to life in the Northwest Counties. But like I said, you just never know with these teams, and it's hard to judge some of these teams at the bottom, despite if there's other issues of how we're gonna end the season. But it's another team who just needs to get a win on the board as soon as possible, really, and almost get that off the shoulder and almost put it to bed a little bit, and saying, actually, this is what it feels like to win the games. We know how much it hurts to lose. Let's take it forward and show people actually that we shouldn't be bottom of the league at the moment.
Yeah, and it's going to be quite a difficult ask for them this weekend. We'll look at this weekend's games for the sides in the Northwest Counties First Division, and we'll start with Shirley because it's bottom welcoming top. And I touched before on the fact that St Helens are the only side in the league to be 6 for 6. I don't exactly know what's happened at St Helens, because I think this is a new form club for this season, because I'm pretty certain, looked at the tables in the last couple of years, St Helens would bottom last season, but with a different name. So I think this might be a situation where the club is reformed, and they're absolutely flying in St Helens. And as I say, for Shelley, that is a difficult-looking test on paper.
Yeah, it does look tricky, doesn't it? You're right. But listen, depending on other fixtures at the moment, Shelley get a win somehow from nowhere. They're in mid-table. This is after 6 games. So, like you said, it seems a very open division at the moment. And even though, like I say, FC St Helens seem to be kind of not necessarily running away with it, but they've had a perfect start, haven't they, to life so far. So, yeah, it's one of those where if you're outside looking in, you think there's only going to be one result. But we know in non-league we've seen enough games, and we're old enough and ugly enough to know that sometimes that just isn't always the case. And you'd never surprise you if Shelley went there and won 1-0. But let's hope somehow they do get out of that bottom position to just climb the table a little bit. And like I say, look at Route 1 at the moment in 4th, Ilkley 6th, Steet in 8th. So the teams are in about the right area, probably apart from Shelley at the moment. And I think, like I say, Route 1 against South Liverpool in that league probably stands out. Like I say,
4th versus 5th there.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting, intriguing fixture. And again, it's one where Route 1 are going to be looking, and if they want to be successful, it's the kind of game they probably should be looking to get a point, or at least a point from. But South Liverpool, notoriously a real tough team to play against in this division. So, 1 win, 2 wins takes you almost up 5-6 places, and that's the beauty of this league. Chapper said it on the first game of the season, that he feels this is a real strong division, and even though FC St Helens have got 3-point advantage on 2nd and 3rd, the rest of them, they're all pretty bunched up at the moment. So give it 4 or 5 games, let's see exactly where people are, and you can probably almost get a feeling of how that season may pan out for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, elsewhere, Ashton Athletic are the hosts of Ilkley Town, and Steeton travel to Runcorn Town. So a couple of tricky-looking away games there, but you wouldn't necessarily bet on both of those sides going away from home and getting the results.
You'd hope so. Yeah, you definitely hope so. And I think, like I said earlier, it is a cliche, but a point away from home is sometimes not a bad result, depending on obviously how the game does kind of go. But if you, I think both teams would probably take a point at the moment. But if you are real serious contenders at the moment with St Helens, you've got to win as many games as you possibly can. Lee said it earlier, didn't he? Almost half an hour ago. He disagreed with what I said, and it's absolutely fair. They can win every game. Obviously, they can't. Some of these teams obviously can't do that now. But from now on, those managers will be absolutely at their players saying, let's not let St Helens get too far away from us. We've got to be still within catching distance, because at some point, it's very rare some teams go unbeaten in leagues. That they are going to slip up at some stage.
let's have a look then further up the pyramid and into the National League. We'll go right to the top and work back down because there's not too many games outside the cup games left. So for the National League, Halifax, of course, certainly started the season better than I expected on the face of it, if I'm honest. Sorry, Dave Foy, a regular contributor, to be fair. Yeah, good wins they've been picking up. Obviously, defeat at Boreham Wood, but a good win at Oldham on Tuesday night.
I mean, what a win at Oldham. Let's be honest. Oldham have been relatively fancy to do really well in this division, and Halifax have gone there and turned him over. I think Oldham introduced debutant Kieran Freeman. We've known him from his time at Derby and Forest and Portsmouth most recently as well. He played James Norwood up front as well. Brennan Dickinson's just signed from recently. And I've got an absolute, warrior at the back with Liam Hogan, who's, we know from Liam from his days at Salford and Stockport. Halifax have gone there. Probably not many fancied him to get any kind of result, never mind a draw. And what they've done is they've gone there and won 2-1. And I think what did Dave say the other week as well about Harker? Rob Harker just scores goals. His percentage is a goal on Tuesday night, and also a winner from Adam Senior, the Halifax lad, the captain himself. So let's be honest, as an away performance and results, pretty much perfect for the Sherman. 7th at the moment in the league. It's hard to say, and without any disrespect for Oxford City, you probably look on paper and you'd be thinking Halifax can hopefully, make it another win for them. Oxford at the moment, not won anything at the moment, scored 3, conceded 8. So, it's one on paper where Halifax should hopefully get another 3 points. And if that is the case, then that really puts some up challenging some of those teams at the top, the likes of your Chesterfields and your Barnetts and even Solihull and Southend. I mean, obviously, without going into too much detail, everybody knows what, kind of happening with Southend and whether they even start the season, and they've started it really, really well. They've only lost 1 in 3. So for Halifax, they'll be really hoping to keep that momentum going because, I think Dave was, I wouldn't say optimistic, maybe just slightly optimistic that we could have an half-decent season. And this is, again, how many times we mentioned this is out with likes of Jesse Deborah as well and a couple of other players leaving. So Grant Millington at the moment, people tipped in he might be the first manager out the door. He might not be.
Yeah, I said, look, I thought it was a very difficult start on paper for Halifax, but they've made an absolute mockery of it so far, so credit to them. Say Oxford City for them at the Shea on Saturday, and certainly a game that they will be, I think, expecting is a fair way of wording it, expecting to win that one. In the National League North then, our sole representative in that league is Farsi Celtic, and a win and 2 draws for them. And again, probably a better start than we necessarily expected because for them, it was a huge summer of change, huge turnover of players in and out of the club, completely new management structure as well in Clayton Donaldson, assisted by Danny Ellis and Tom Morgan. And it's started, as I say, it started far better than I thought we thought it would. They seem to have hit the ground running that little bit easier than we thought.
You know what, Farnsley have been decent, haven't they, so far? I don't think many people would have put Farnsley to not lose it of them first 3 games. A real tricky opener against Rushall Olympic on paper, and looked like they pretty much convincingly and comfortably beat them away from home on what could have been a real difficult fixture for them. Then they draw at home to Charlie. Yes, they have been through a little bit of change, Charlie, but you always know what you're going to get from an Andy Priest team. Real tough team who will grind out victories. And Farnsley drew on against them and then drew against South Shields. Last minute penalty. It looked clumsy, to be fair. It did look a penalty on the highlights from what I've seen. But Farnsley, it was a game of plenty of chances, but Farnsley could have easily taken a lead really early on. If anybody's seen it, Clayton Donaldson misses from about 5 yards in front of goal, 1-on-1, and that's not like Clayton Donaldson. You never see him miss them kind of opportunities.
And at least we know he wasn't getting an absolute telling off from the manager.
I think he might be telling himself off. I think, like Danny Ellis might be bringing the manager off and bringing him on up front. And Danny Ellis, I think, might have done a job up front with that one. Yeah, absolutely. But listen, I think it shows, it shows a bit of stubbornness, doesn't it? A bit of fight within the team to come back. And one real standout from what I've seen so far is the goalkeeper, Zanluk Leben. He's from Everton at the moment on loan in goal, and he looks a player and a half. He's making some saves that, without any disrespect to our league, he looks decent. And let's be absolutely honest about this. Farsley are going to need a good keeper to survive in this league. And that's not being harsh. That's probably reality in terms of expectations where some of the so-called experts put them. They need a real good number one. And if they can keep him for the rest of the season, they stand half a chance. They absolutely do because he looks impressive.
Absolutely. And for them, it's a long trip in that National League North to Bishop Stortford. And of course, look, we all know that Bishop Stortford, frankly, didn't want to be here, did they? They appealed the league allocation, and you can't blame them when you look at the way the league pans out. But for them and for Farsley, is that long trip south to just north of London.
Yeah, to that long trip south and a half. I mean, yeah, it's bonkers anyway. But I mean, Bishop Stortford upset everybody, didn't they? You know, they probably broke a lot of hackers in that first game, beating Chester 2-0. I mean, that is an unbelievable result at home, and took the goals really well. Followed up with a solid draw against Gloucester, then a lose against Brackley, which isn't a disgrace, and it wasn't a battering, it was a 1-0 defeat. So, again, we mentioned it, like you said there, they appealed the decision to be in the league. They lost quite a number of players because of the travelling, and, you know, that is a massive factor. But it seems already, with a newly built squad, that they're not there again. Another team to not make up the numbers. So Farsley, it's a long trip. I dread to think what time they're setting off in the morning. If not, do they set off even Friday night to get there for 3:00 on Saturday? But if Farsley come away again with a solid point, that is a real good result for them. And let's be honest, we've been undefeated in 3 games, you might see Farsley come away with some kind of result there.
Yeah, wouldn't be too surprised at all. Northern Premier League, then, it all got underway on Saturday, first game of the season. And go on, Lewis, we'll put you out of your misery and we'll get onto the Avenue good and early. Look, we said beforehand when we were speaking last week, it was always made a difficult test. Macclesfield Town, one of the favourites for the league. And obviously, we spoke to Mark Bauer last week and he kind of said similar. 2-0 defeat on the opening day for your lads.
Yeah, and kind of without me having new tinted glasses on, first half was reasonably close. Don't get me wrong, Macclesfield across 90 minutes with a better team. The better team won, and probably 2-0 was about the right result. But at 1-0 up, which was, if you've seen the goal, is a phenomenal goal. I think they put about 31 passes together to score the first goal. Yes, you can ask questions about should we be allowed to get 30 passes. And let's be honest, there's not many teams in this league who are going to put 30 passes together and score a goal. But, you know, it might not happen a lot. But the turn from Alex Curran and Curran, seen in his days in the past at Curzon and Col, I mean, he is some player. And without, again, any disrespect to this division, he's probably too good for this league. He turned Luke Havern like he wasn't even there, and his finish was superb. And to be fair, Curran could have had an extra 2 or 3 on the day. But at 1-0, Avenue had a chance. Lucas Adunson put through from Brad Doherty, 1-on-1, and he smashes the right side of the upright instead of going in the top corner. If that goes in, it could be a different, end to the first half, beginning of the second. And even the first 10-15 minutes, I'd say Avenue, dominated a bit of possession, looked a little bit threatening going forward. But then, to be fair to Matt Duffy's side, the game managed it extremely well. They managed it like a National League North team. Looked solid, looked really organised, really disciplined, and without time wasting, they just saw the game out extremely well. We had a midfield, obviously, with Paul Dawson and John Nolan, who've got all the experience in the world. And
John Nolan is at this level is bonkers because he's not even that old.
I mean, he's about 31, isn't he? Yeah, and you can tell he's got that absolute quality in the ball, and we can see it a mile off in non-league. When the player's got quality, they've got it because they've got time or it looks like they've got time on the ball, and he just had that in abundance. In Avenue's midfield, and like so Will Lancaster, Harrison Hopper, good players in their own right, but John Nolan was on a level above. And attacking wise, I think I watched the highlights again from the game midweek. Macclesfield are on a different planet going forward, and the thing is with Macclesfield is 1, they've already got a really strong team, and 2, they've shown last season they can almost strengthen as well in the transfer market whenever they want to. I still expect Macclesfield to win a league. It's not the most outrageous prediction I'm ever going to make, but I would say that they're they've shown why they were favourites. And people were saying, "Oh, I'm not too sure about them," and they admitted they weren't at the best. But to be, to go to a recent relegated team away from home and win 2-0 and deserve it, shows the quality of what they've got at Mosh Rose now.
Tuesday night, Atherton Collieries. Again, no disrespect to Atherton at all, but wildly different sort of club and backing and fan base to their Cheshire counterparts in Macclesfield, but the same result for Bradford Park Avenue in a 2-0 defeat.
Yeah, it was very disappointing from Avenue's perspective. Atherton Collieries, again, better team, deserved to win. It is absolutely. I didn't think there was any doubt about it. I was surprised by some of the post-match comments from Mark. I can appreciate what they're saying about, we did have a fair bit of possession, but for me, we could still be playing now and not score. I thought I think we got out-bullied. I think we got out-fought a little bit by them. And what worries me is that we tried to out-football them. And it looked to me on the night, I'm not saying this might be across the course of a season, but we might not be good enough to out-football some of these teams. I'm not saying Atherton College probably out-footballed us, but what they did is they outwitted us and played the way that this division sometimes warrants, and we've got to be equipped at Avenue to deal with different situations and scenarios. Like you said, it's chalk and cheese. You're playing 1 week Macclesfield without any respect. The following few days of playing Atherton Collieries, they're completely different tests. Yes, we did dominate a lot of possession that second half, but without really properly threatening the goalkeeper. He's made one decent save from long bottom in the first half, and then Mitchell Lunder smashed the bar from about 30 yards going down the hill. And for those that do know the calls, it is down the hill as well. But I was surprised that Avenue didn't shoot a bit more on sight from distance, especially going down the hill. Saw it even in the National League North at the weekend at Tamworth. The lads hit it from 30 yards going down the hill at Spennymoor. That is a hill again. And it's naturally going to dip. It's naturally going to go over the keeper, whether that's going over the bar or whatever, but just naturally going to go over somehow. And when Lundy smashed the bar, you're thinking, just do that a little bit more often. Let's really test the keeper. But yeah, it was disappointing. A lot of fans, and rightly so, I think, were really disappointed and found it unacceptable. But listen, that's a level that the club's at the moment. And the squad isn't big enough sometimes to probably deal with a lot of tests in different scenarios, and that's got to happen quite quickly to adapt to those. And this weekend, Bamber Bridge away missed out on promotion in the 90th minute of playoff. Morpeth on Monday night, again 2 very different tests, with a lot of fans going away on Tuesday night going, well, we aren't going to win at Bamber Bridge, but then the lads have got they've got the ability about them. But we've just got to show a little bit more ruthlessness and, both in front of goal, but also just in our own penalty area as well. We've got to keep them out because the goals were decent, but were avoidable.
Do I get the sense that, quite similar to last season, Bradford Park Avenue are going into the campaign with a squad that is perhaps not exactly packed with experience, know-how, just now when things get ugly and dirty?
I personally think so. I said that at the beginning of the season. I think we needed a little bit of experience, a bit more leadership in there. We have got a few leaders in there, but what stood out for me for quite a while is that, we're not the most vocal of teams. Sometimes it doesn't always make a positive difference, but I think sometimes, majority of the time, it does.
Yeah.
Atherton Collieries they never shut up between 6-7 of them. And sometimes that communication just helps everybody along the journey, really, through a game. And I think from our perspective, we are inexperienced. We have absolute ability. There's no doubt about that. The players on the day could match a lot of teams in this division. But for me, it's that physicality, that experience. It's sometimes for those young lads who are going to be quite low in confidence, let's be brutally honest about this, who need somebody to kind of look to, just for a little bit of a shoulder to either lean on, somebody to put their arm around them, or let's be honest, give them a telling. They need that experienced head to help them along the way. And when they're looking at each other and they're all 20, 21, 22, 23, that's difficult to look to either side because nobody's got that experience to count on. So I've said it again from day one, that's what we lack. And Atherton did exactly what you see in this division. They've won ugly. And yeah, they won ugly, but they also won with some decent football. So you've just got to mix it up. If we had, I'd say, 4 or 5 experienced heads in that team. And let's be honest, we are missing Jamie Spencer, who did come on in the second half, Jordan Preston as well. So they are two players who had a little bit more experience, but I wouldn't say are the leaders compared to what you might see in a Northern Premier League division. You know, the debate's there to be had. So, the squad's thin. I think they're counting on to play football, but the worry for me is to go to the likes of the Coles and not win ugly and not do what you needed to do, because without any disrespect to Atherton, we don't know where we're going to finish in the season, but many have tipped in to finish towards the lower end of that division. If Avenue to be successful, and for me, success is getting to the playoffs, you need to be going there and winning those games. And it's a bit of a reality check to one, for a lot of us who go actually where we are, and two, what's needed to improve.
Yeah, there's certainly, again, I don't want to be too pessimistic for your weekend, but there's certainly a risk that Bamber Bridge could do something very similar. I remember seeing them come to Nethermore last season and beat Guiseley with a rugged, organised, experienced sort of performance. So it might be a tough one for Avenue for the weekend before that home game against Morpeth on Monday night. Turning our attention then to Guiseley again, not necessarily the start that we expected, actually, for the wrong reasons. Obviously, going to Hyde on the opening day, that 1-1 draw certainly seems to be a good point. Hyde are a side again that you would expect to be certainly sniffing around those playoff positions. But for Guiseley, getting back to Nethermore on Tuesday night against Whitby Town, again, a good organised side, but on the face of it, with the squad that has been put together by Paul Phillips, a game that I certainly expected, or at least hoped for definite, that Guiseley would have got over the line. But a 3-1 home defeat and to find themselves 3-0 down would certainly been frustrating, should we put it politely, for Paul Phillips.
Yeah, especially like you said, after the weekend, that's a decent result against Hyde. And I know that obviously we spoke to David, didn't we, the week before, and he was saying as much as he'd love to thump Hyde, they'll take a draw. And they did that, and even took the lead in that game. So they might be slightly disappointed to not even come away with 3 points. Again, the history between managers and some of the players in the Geyser team as well suggests that. But then to follow it up with quite a disappointing defeat to Whitby, watched the highlights, and what really stood out for me was all 3 goals came from wide areas. They were all put in a box, and Geyser just didn't deal with any of them. And I think even after the first goal, I saw Phillips' reaction, and I think he had a hat on, and I think he just flung it in the dugout in absolute frustration. I think another one, he was just calling on his bench to go and warm up. He won't accept that as a manager, an experienced manager that he is, and what he's about is, he's a winning manager. So to concede goals like that, they're not worldies. They're there to be won in the battles, and he'll be looking at his defence for a massive improvement. To one, stop the crosses, and if the crosses do get in, you've got to deal with them. They look to have a couple of the chances as well, to be fair to Guiseley, and I know that obviously it was Tom Denton who scored towards, kind of midway through the second half. But even then, I think Whitby had a couple of chances after. There were even a shout for a penalty, towards the latter end of the game. So it's going to be one where I don't think the players are going to like going into training to hear Paul Phillips, because I think he will now look at that result and may switch things around a little bit. Because he will not accept a performance and a result like that. But I mean, for the Geyser fans who were there, Phillips might not necessarily be bothered. But there's a return of a former manager coming in the dugout on Saturday, isn't there? So that could be a really interesting one.
I was going to touch on that next, and the return of one Steve Kittrick. Obviously, a great affiliation with Guiseley over the years. He took them out of the Northern Premier League into the National League North, and made the playoffs in consecutive seasons as manager there as well before he left, and obviously then returned as an interim manager at the back end of the final National League North season, and came oh so close to keeping Guiseley up on the final day. But he returns. I think another job in between, but he comes back with Ashforth United. And yeah, it's one of them, as you say, for Paul Phillips, it'll just be another game. But for the fans, they'll want to get one over Kitty as much as he is well loved around the place.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, without any disrespect to all to Basford, you'd probably say guys, they should be winning this game at home, but you know what you're going to get from Kitty's side. We all know what you're going to get from that. You're going to get a real tough, a real frustrating team to play against. Really hard to break down. They've got 1 point out of 2. I know they've got a few, players who people may know, like Dom Roma as well. Dom's been around the block quite a while now. Zayn Hakeem's up front. You know, he started off a season in the past few years ago with Avenue. So they're going to go.
The former
Chris.
line there as well in John Wafula, who was on Guys' books in that National League season that came down.
Yeah, so I mean, from Guys' perspective, Phillips won't accept anything other than a win, and it wouldn't, again, like I say earlier, surprise me that he switches things up a bit after midweek. And I think what you've got to do is you've got to have a bit of momentum, because you've got Gainsborough in midweek as well away, which is a real tough fixture. So the two away fixtures are against teams that were predicted to be up there, and again, without any disrespect to the other teams at home were kind of almost tipped towards the lower end. You know, what do experts know? Sometimes the tables can be completely upside down, and they still might be. But I'd expect a fight back from Guiseley. It might not be pretty on the eye, and it might be a real battle, but I'd expect Navi Moore to be rocking probably come 90 minutes to encourage the lads to get 3 points.
Yeah, I think if guys could come away from these next two with, I think 4 points, to be honest, would be a good return if they could, get over the line, get all 3 against Basford, and then take a point on Tuesday night against Trinity. That'd be a good return fixture, points-wise at least.
Yeah, and they need to, don't they? Because, like I say, even though nothing's won in the first couple of games, I mean, albeit I think Alan Armstrong's called Scunthorpe the winners already of National League North last night. You don't normally win the title after 2 or 3 games, but you can lose it. And especially in the Northern Premier League at the moment, in the Premier Division, Macclesfield are there to be caught. They're the ones that are leading the way. And like I said earlier, I can't see many people catching them, but there's going to be a lot of congested teams in there, and you can't be playing catch up because guys who've got a pretty deep squad as well. When you look on paper, and also Lewis Whitten to come back, like we mentioned last week. So guys who've just got to get up and running as soon as I possibly can. I've been really impressed by the recruitment, really impressed by their squad on paper. Looks really strong. And like I say, I think probably right now as we're speaking, I bet the lads are being put through the paces if we're training tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's turn our attention to the Northern Premier League East and the sides across our region: Brighouse Town, Liversedge, Ossett and Pontefract. And starting with Brighouse, a couple of thrillers, quite frankly. 2 draws for them in their first 2 games, but a 4-4 against Ashington and a 3-3 draw against North Ferriby United.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting the goals, aren't they? I wonder if that's where Dave is just trying to either have some goalkeeping practice, maybe. That'd be interesting to see where he is tonight. Obviously, with the association at Brighouse, wow, it's what, 14 goals in 2 games. We talked about Nostell earlier with scoring goals. Brighouse are definitely doing it, but they're conceding it as well. I don't think it's a bad result at Ashington, despite the number of goals. I mentioned last week, that is a real tough place to go, especially in the first day of the season. They've just been recently promoted. I don't think that's bad. And I actually don't think it's a bad result against North Ferriby either. Both recently promoted teams, but Ferriby are going to be relatively strong. So I think Brighouse might be relatively happy with their start to the season.
The frustration is going to lie in conceding 2 goals in like 90th minute and beyond at Ashington to be 4-2 up and then end up throwing it away for a 4-4 draw. But you've been to Ashington, you know how tough it can be.
Yeah, and you're right. We mentioned it earlier, didn't we? Sometimes you take a draw away from home, depending on how that game goes. I think probably when you look at it, in a day later on, probably don't seem a bad point. But obviously, immediately after, when you concede so late in the game, it's going to be bitterly disappointing. I've not really seen the full game yet, but 4-4 suggests it's end to end, and it's not anything could happen. And I even imagine during the goals, there's going to be plenty of chances missed by both teams. So, listen, I don't think it's a bad start for Brighouse. They're away at Colne in the FA Cup, and then back in league action away at Grimsby Borough. So, I think Brighouse, like I said, I can't repeat myself. They've got a brand new team. Will Powell's, brought a lot of players in. There's been a massive overhaul in that team. So, to not lose so far, I think it'll be relatively okay with what they've done.
Moving on then to Liversedge, 3-0 defeats back-to-back for them against Cleethorpes and Stocksbridge Park Steels. Tough start to life back in the Northern Premier League East, bearing in mind that, of course, the last time they were in it, they won it.
Yeah, tough. Cleethorpes are going to be up there, no doubt about it. Really strong squad. We mentioned them last week with the quality they've got. But 3-0 is a beating, and so is Stocksbridge. I know Stocksbridge have, kind of built themselves up a little bit again, and they'll probably have a very steady season, probably maybe knocking on the door of the playoffs. Liverpool would be really disappointed, I think, to lose quite convincingly and not even score a goal. But another team in our area who's had a massive overhaul in players and staff as well. So I think from their perspective, it does. Obviously, they are playing in the cup against North Ferriby, but it will feel a little bit almost like a league fixture, which might not do them too bad because you've just got to get in the swing of things. You've got to get going. And Liverpool definitely have a quality to it in the squad. It's having that spine that they've built to get up and going. The likes of Tolson, Heslop, and McCormack, if when he gets fit properly and he's up and running, that's a real experienced spine, and the rest of them have obviously got to kind of do what they need to do. And we spoke about Avenue having them older heads. That spine can really help some of them young lads get through these tougher times. There are bad days at the office 3-0. I've not seen the games personally yet. I've seen highlights, but 3-0 suggests they weren't the best team, so they've got to somehow get to points tally to positives very quickly.
Yeah, somehow with the strange turn of fate with the fixtures, so their next two games are against the two sides that Brighouse have already played. As you mentioned, North Ferriby United in the Cup, Ashington away on Tuesday night. Again, obviously we've seen from the Brighouse result and the late comeback from Ashington in that game that's not going to be an easy place to go to on a Tuesday night.
That's us it. Brighouse, Liversidge have got Newton Aycliffe, but yeah, I mean, you're right. Yep, you're right. You're right. There's too many teams in our region to talk about, but no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I think from Liversidge, home form, we spoke about it when they went up, was massive for them, and they've just got to somehow get points on the board as soon as possible. Like you said about Ossett, Ashington away, I mean, that is a journey and a half to go up on a Tuesday night up to the North East. And unfortunately, Ossett have just not started the season well enough. Losing 3-1 at Sheffield and 4-2 at Dunstan. They ironically could have been, like I said earlier, playing Lee's team at Campion if he hadn't lost to Withenshaw. And that's going to be a real tough game against a team that won, on all accounts, a very impressive North West Counties team. And I think could probably match quite a few teams in this division. So Ossett United are going to be, like I said last week, I don't think we're going to be up and around the playoffs. If we do, that's a very decent season. We need to consolidate pretty quickly. And like Liversidge, we've just got to somehow stop the goals going in, because 7 goals in 2 games isn't good enough. And when you've got the likes of Paddy Miller and Harry Coates at the back, those two players who I know will expect a lot more from themselves and the rest of the team.
Finally, from our Northern Premier League East sides, Pontefract Collieries, and they obviously an opening day defeat to Carlton Town by 2-1. And then where exactly do you want to start for their game in midweek against Concert?
Maybe on the bus about 4 o'clock and then getting home on like Wednesday morning.
Yeah, talk us through it. It was, in the end, it was an abandonment, but with quite a saga.
Yeah, if anybody's tuned in watching this or is watching it on catch up, I would suggest to go and check out Ponty's social media, because they've captured it, 1, brilliantly, and 2, in real classic non-league style with a little bit of banter thrown in. So yeah, a midweek game away at Concert up in the northeast, another place I've been to. It's a very tight, small ground, amazing people, very good setup. But on arrival, they've turned up and
it rained.
Pitch. It rained. Yeah, it rained quite a lot. Yeah. When I say quite a lot, there's a large amount of water standing on the pitch, on an artificial pitch. So they delayed kickoff. We even got a tractor on it to try and move some of the water off the pitch. I don't think we kicked off till about 8:30-ish. Shortly after, floodlight failure, one of the lights goes out. I don't know what's true, what's not true, because obviously I wasn't there. There's rumours suggesting that maybe one of the players may have helped sort some electricity out.
If one of the players is a Sparky, I can be a great help.
Absolutely. So whether that's true or not, if that is the case, that is amazing. And obviously it's got, delayed. I think we talk about added time at the moment in football. I think that might be the longest added time I've ever seen, probably about 35 minutes. But despite Concert being 1 up at half time, the game goes on. We're about into the 80th minute now, and the floodlights go out and abandoned. And I think by the time the actual game got abandoned, it's about 10:30 at night. So from setting off at about 4 o'clock, 6 hours later, the game just about finishes. And it doesn't finish, it gets abandoned. And Paul Ponty have got to go back midweek and do it all over again.
Yeah, now I mean, is something not going to come from this? Because I thought, I mean, again, this might just be me picking things up over the years and not being right. I thought if a game got beyond 75 minutes, the result could stand.
I thought the same thing, but the rules change every year, don't they? So who knows?
Well, yeah, maybe someone can correct me on this, but I thought within the last few years it was a case of if it got to the 75-minute mark, the result could stand. Now, whether that's in agreement with the clubs, I don't know. But as you say, it looks certainly for like that's not going to be the case, and they are going to have to go back and do it all over again.
Yeah, I think there'll be many people using a certain search engine now and Googling that and doing all that kind of stuff. Well, let's have a look. But I think
what I should have done before opening my mouth.
Which is what we should have done. Yeah, absolutely. We should have done, shouldn't we? I mean, for Ponty to do that, we talked, didn't we, like earlier with Lee, and you mentioned it about people working and shift working, and even he was saying there's some players who might not be able to play on a Friday because of working. We're talking about a team who's, some players, let's be honest, have taken days off work, time off work, or worked extra hours to make that trip. And they get so close to finishing a game, even though the result is not in a favour, but they've already had the game delayed by half an hour and then delayed furthermore by floodlights. Still potentially playing at 10:30, which, let's be honest, is probably not going to be unheard of this season. The amount of minutes that are going to get added on in games.
Well,
and then to get postponed. So, listen, let's see what comes of that. 1-0. They've been probably a little bit disappointed with that result. I think they'll be even more gutted at the fact that the game's got abandoned and they've got to go back, and they'll be. I think they'll be checking out certain websites before they make the trip to see what the situation is like. And knowing the guys when I went up to concert, they're a fantastic bunch of people, and they'd have done everything they possibly do to get that game on and make it sure it goes through. But if it's not a waterlogged pitch on an artificial surface, it's floodlight failure. I mean, it's non-league bingo in itself, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. And for Pontefract Collieries, they're at home to Gisborough on Saturday in the FA Cup, and then at home to Hebburn in the league on Tuesday night. Two tricky-looking fixtures. Yeah,
North East teams are always notoriously tough teams to face, whether you're home or away. Or if you go away and may not finish the full game, who knows? But yeah, I mean, we said it, didn't we? Ponty on paper look like they've got a decent enough side to get through it. In a weird kind of way, that journey back from concert may actually help them through the season. Because if we know our non-league reasonably well, I'd say, but you know as much as me, that trip back would have been quite entertaining. Would have been quite a little laughs, quite a bit of banter, and sometimes that togetherness could actually bring a lot of that squad together. With a lot of new faces. Don't get me wrong, they'd have been absolutely exhausted, and probably by the time they pulled up at Ponty, they're probably ready for bed and probably getting up for work almost 4 hours later on. But in a way that might actually really help them out in terms of team spirit, just to get the lads together again and reset for the next couple of games. And like we said earlier, cup games, Ponty have had a decent cup runs in the past few years as well. They'll be wanting to replicate that, because with that, not only does it breed confidence on the pitch, but it's good prize money. And for these clubs, it's vital. We've seen what it's done for Ponty in the past couple of years. They've been decent enough and sustainable enough at this, in this division to do well. And like we said, these teams in the Northern Premier League, we said earlier about North East Counties League, North West, but NPL teams are probably hoping to get to what maybe the third round tops. Fourth round would be unbelievable. I remember one year at Avenue, we played Ossett Albion at home, and it was like Tom Corner, Tom now at North Ferriby. Tom got a move to Avenue based just simply on that game. So there is an opportunity for teams to get as close as I possibly can do to that first round, because we've seen it in the past. Teams from absolutely nowhere somehow get there and on TV and do extremely well. And I remember, again, using Avenue as an example, we played in the first round. We went away down south to AFC Tottenham. FC Tottenham at the time were in the Southern League. Very, ironically, same position, same number of points. I think almost the same record as Avenue, and they won very convincingly in the end. And the following round we're on TV, in front of the TV camera against Bristol Rovers. That's the dream of these teams. That is absolutely the dream of these teams. And yes, they are a division below the Premier Division, but they can absolutely do it with some good teams in that division.
Yeah, if you can make your way obviously through this preliminary round and into the qualifying rounds, and who knows what can happen. Of course, to be fair, some of the I think is it one game from each of the qualifying rounds as well ends up being streamed on BBC iPlayer live as well. So there's some extra little motivation there as well. So just to round up then for the Northern Premier League East teams that are in cup action this weekend, Brighouse are away at Colne. Liversidge are at home to North Ferriby United. Ossett United are at home to Wythenshawe. And Pontefract are at home to Gisborough. That's all on Saturday. Looking then finally at the rest of the cup action for this week, when I can find my list, which I can't. Have you got it to hand? There's enough games to go with. What we'll start with, though, is the one side from the North West counties that is in cup action this weekend, and that's Barlick Town against Whitchurch Alport, which for me is one of the best names in non-league football. I can't think of any other team that's Alport, but obviously it's the place.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were saying, weren't we, just before on air about Handsworth? We used to have Panama, which was unique in itself, wasn't it? Yes. It's a good old pub quiz question for us non-league geeks. Yeah, I mean, Barlick, we said earlier, didn't we? We touched on them earlier about, coming down from 4-1 down to draw 4-all. They'll be going there and hopefully not going back from 4-1 down at half-time to get something out of that game. And yeah, you just never know, do you? Teams like I've never, in all my time watching the league, I've never watched Whitchurch Alport, so I can't even really comment of what that could possibly be. But from our perspective, very selfish in our region, let's hope Barlick do well.
It's the beauty of the cup, isn't it? Going to these places that look, you might have seen a league table, but you have no idea where it is or anything about the clubs. Elsewhere, so we touched on Albion Sports, go to Burscough. That is certainly a tricky looking tie against the side from the northwest counties. Penistone Church are at home to Prestwich Hayes. And slightly out of our area, Tadcaster Albion against West Allotment Celtic, which I am fairly certain is right by Newcastle Airport, West Allotment Celtic. I've got a feeling that Eton were there in a cup or Vars game a couple of years ago. Certainly some tricky looking tests on paper, but look, we just have to wish everybody well and hope that they can get through into that. What will it be? The first qualifying round?
Yeah. We definitely hope and pray that some of our lads do. It'd be great to see them get through, and there's always somehow one team just goes on a real good run, and you might not even expect them to go on a good run. It's a shame some of the teams have already dropped out, especially from the North East Counties leagues. Probably not as successful as we hoped in our region to get through to the preliminary round at the moment. But let's hope the MPL lads can do that and fly that West Yorkshire flag.
There's one further cup game to mention, not on Saturday, but on Wednesday. And that's Emley, who travel to Lower Breck from the Northwest Counties side of the leagues. I think they're a Liverpool-based side, actually, a Lower Breck. So, yes, Emley, who are in league action at the weekend. For some reason, the cup game is Saturday. Not entirely sure, to be honest, why it's panned out that way, but that's the way it is. So, Emley's still in cup action as well. I think after nearly an hour and a half, Lewis, we're good. Review last weekend's action, and at least this weekend's action. There is a full fixture list as well next midweek. Of course, this weekend's games start tomorrow night with Campion being in action against Pickering Town. That's up at Manningham in Bradford tomorrow night. So if you're at a loose end and in the Bradford area tomorrow night, get yourself up to Campion. I know me and Lewis will be going up to taking that game. And then looking to next week, when that's say there is a full midweek, I think, of fixtures. I think Brev Park Avenue will play on Monday. There's Northern Counties East League games, I think, on Tuesday and Wednesday. And I think the same applies to the Northwest Counties as well. Thursday, I think, is the only day when that actually isn't games. I think even on Friday, there's a local one somewhere across our region. If you talk, I'll try and find it.
I know Campion at Wickham in the northeast near Fairvars. That might be the one we're thinking of. But yeah, we did talk about it, didn't we? Could we possibly do 4 games in a week and a podcast on a Thursday, and then you've got the games on Saturday? I actually don't think I can possibly. I'd love to do it. I don't think it's even possible to do it. But there's so much football around for people to go and watch, and we say it all the time. and we might sound really boring for saying it, but there is so much out there for people to go and watch this week. Whether you can go to all 4 or 5 games across the region, or maybe a couple, like probably what we'll do. There's going to be some real intriguing ties across our region at the moment. And even though it is early in the season, you will get some entertainment and some gems to see, and you will absolutely notice those players that might just stand out. And you never know how far we can go. We've seen it. How many times we spoke with lads earlier with Dave. We've seen the likes of Jamie Vardy, Lee Gregory in the past. We've come from this level, the likes of Stocksbridge, likes of Halifax, etc., and even further down. So honestly, I urge people, if you get the opportunity to go and watch it, your local football team, absolutely do it, because you won't be disappointed.
I can't find it. I think it might be that Campion one that's stuck in my head, to be honest. Away at Wickham. As in Wickham North East, not Wickham
Wanderers.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be some tie. Campion have done well this season, but I don't think they'd be that good.
Yeah, if Wickham Wanderers end up in the Vars in some parallel universe somewhere, that would be quite impressive for Campion. But yes, there we go. An hour and a half, all wrapped up for your non-league scene across West Yorkshire. For those that have somehow stuck with us for the full show, a big thank you and great commitment. For those of you watching on catch up, do give us a like across social media. We're on Twitter at WYorksFootball. We're also on Facebook at the West Yorkshire Football Show. The same applies on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel as well. I know that Steve and Jason will no doubt be back with a championship roundup soon. We'll be back next week, no doubt, with our non-league roundup as well, if we can fit it in between games. That's if you're not divorced by then anyway, mate. I will see you tomorrow night. Thanks to everyone watching here on the West Yorkshire Football Show, our non-league show special. We'll see you next week.